Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a specific feeling, a feeling that I think a lot of you listening will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
So picture this. You have spent years, maybe a decade, studying a language. You've done the flashcards. You've dragged yourself to those evening classes after a long day at work. You've passed the exams.
You got the certificates on the wall?
Exactly. On paper, you are advanced. You are officially a C1 speaker. You have, for all intents and purposes, built the house.
It's a massive achievement. I mean,
Yeah.
really, you have the foundation, the roof, the plumbing, everything is technically there. It's a solid structure.
Right, the house is built, you've got the keys in your hand, but then you actually have to move in. You step out your front door into the neighborhood, the real English-speaking world, and suddenly you realize you have absolutely no idea how to live there.
And that right there is the classic C1 plateau. It's it's often the most frustrating part of the entire language learning journey
It has to be.
because the map you were using to build the house,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't help you navigate the neighborhood at all. It's a completely different skill set.
It feels so unfair. I've seen it with so many people. They walk into a bar or a party with a group of native speakers, feeling really confident with their C1 certificate in their back pocket, and within 30 seconds, they feel like beginners again.
Oh, completely. Back to square one.
And it's not because they don't know the words. That's the crazy part. It's because the game has totally changed, and they're just lost in the noise.
That's because the rules of the game have completely inverted. See, everything up until about the B2 level, that solid intermediate stage, the game is all about accumulation.
Accumulation. So just gathering more stuff.
Exactly. More words, more grammar rules. It's basically a math problem. If you study for X hours, you memorize Y words, you'll get Z result. It feels very linear. It's predictable.
Wait, C1 isn't math.
No. C1 is jazz. It's no longer about basic function. It's not about, can I order a coffee or can I find the train station? You can do that in your sleep by now.
Right, that's autopilot.
The real challenge at C1 is navigating chaos. It's dealing with diverse accents from all over the world. It's people interrupting each other. It's the background noise in a busy cafe. And probably the most important thing, it's about all the things that people aren't explicitly saying.
The implication factor.
That's it, right there, the subtext. The sarcasm, the cultural references that are just thrown into a sentence without any explanation. When you get to this level, you're not just listening for data anymore. You're listening for vibes.
For vibes.
You're listening for intent. You're trying to figure out if that compliment your colleague just gave you was actually an insult.
Which, let's be honest, in British English, it very often is.
More often than not. And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We have pulled together a massive stack of research, a bunch of fascinating case studies and expert interviews to really map out how you survive that transition.
Okay, so what's the plan?
We're going to look at that textbook versus reality gap. We're going to break down the mechanics of advanced listening, how to actually hear what isn't said. And then we're going to pivot and talk about speaking. Not just speaking to be understood, but speaking to be yourself.
That distinction feels so important, sounding like yourself, not just a walking, talking translation of yourself.
Precisely. The end goal here is to close the gap between the personality you have in your native language and the personality you're able to express in English. We want them to be the same person.
So to do this, we have 4 very distinct case studies to guide us today. We're going to meet Kenji, who's a software engineer in London. Then there's Sophia, a cardiologist. After that, Anya, a philosophy student. And finally, Saibo, an entrepreneur.
And each one of them hit that same C1 wall, but for different reasons. And each of them found a very specific tactical way to break through it.
I'm glad you used the word tactical.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize that. We're not just going to sit here and say, oh, you should listen more or practice more. We're going to break down how to listen. We're going to get into the cognitive science of it all.
Okay, fantastic. Let's get right into it then. I want to start with Kenji because his story, when I was reading through the research, it just feels so unfair.
It does.
So Kenji is a software engineer from Japan. He's a brilliant guy, obviously very smart. He gets this huge job opportunity and moves to London. And when you look at his file, this guy is a star student.
Oh, absolutely. Perfect exam scores. If you gave him a written grammar test, he'd probably beat 90% of native speakers.
Seriously.
Yeah, he knew the subjunctive mood, the third conditional, all the stuff we forget after high school. He had a vocabulary list of 10,000 words just memorized cold.
So he gets off the plane. He walks into his first day at this super cool open plan office in Shoreditch. Hip, trendy, noisy. And he walks into the morning stand-up meeting and
Yeah,
just crash.
total system failure.
He described the feeling to the interviewers for this case study. He said he felt like he was underwater.
That is a very, very common description we see. Underwater or in a fog. The fundamental problem was that Kenji had learned clean English.
Clean English? What's that?
Think about the audio tracks they use in a language textbook. It's always, hello, my name is John. How are you?
Right, super slow and clear.
It's studio quality. There's no background noise. The enunciation is perfect. The speakers are professional actors who are literally paid to be as clear and easy to understand as humanly possible.
And a London office is definitely not clean English.
London is messy. I mean, wonderfully messy. You've got a Mancunian accent over here, a Cockney accent over there. Someone is mumbling into their coffee cup. There's a police siren wailing past the window, and two people are talking at the exact same time.
So Kenji wasn't really dealing with a language problem?
Not at its core, no. He was dealing with a signal-to-noise ratio problem. There was too much noise, and he couldn't find the signal.
There's this one specific moment he describes that really just cements this whole thing. The sources call it the street smarts gap. He's in the break room, just trying to make a cup of tea, and a colleague, let's call him Dave, is complaining about their boss. And Dave says, yeah, he told me I need to be more punctual. That's a bit rich.
Oh, that's a bit rich. That is such a dangerous phrase for a non-native speaker. A total minefield.
Right, because Kenji just freezes. His brain starts doing the math. Bit means a small amount. Rich means wealthy or expensive. So he's standing there thinking, is Dave saying the boss is slightly wealthy? Or is the situation expensive in some way?
And while he's trying to process that logic, you can almost see the loading icon spinning in his head as he accesses his internal dictionary. The conversation has completely moved on.
Exactly. Everyone else is laughing, sharing a moment, and Kenji's just standing there holding his mug, smiling awkwardly, completely and utterly lost.
He missed the idiom, of course. That's a bit rich means that's hypocritical coming from you.
Right. The boss is always late himself.
Exactly. But it's more than just the idiom. He missed the tone. He missed the sarcasm in Dave's voice, the eye roll that probably went with it. He was listening to the words, not the person.
This leads directly to the advice Kenji got from his mentor at the company. And this is the part I really want to drill down on because at first glance, it sounds like terrible advice.
It does. It sounds completely counterintuitive.
His mentor, a British guy, told him, Kenji, you need to stop listening to the words.
Stop listening to the words. I mean, it sounds crazy, doesn't it? We spend our whole lives being taught that listening is about catching every single word. But at the C1 level, that's a trap. Listening is about catching the melody.
Okay, so what does that mean, practically? The melody, it sounds a bit abstract.
It comes down to something called prosody. English is what we call a stress-timed language. It has a rhythm, a musicality to it. We go up and down in pitch to signal meaning. The notes are as important as the lyrics.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about that phrase. If I say, that's a bit rich, with a sharp, felling tone on the word rich, I'm signaling my judgment. It's a statement. But if I say, that's a bit rich, with a rising intonation at the end, I'm genuinely asking if something is too expensive. The words are identical. The music is different.
So Kenji was decoding the data, the letters on the page, but he was completely ignoring the music.
He was trying to be a computer reading code. His mentor was telling him to be a musician hearing the song. It's a profound shift from data processing, which is that strict word-by-word decoding to holistic communication. You have to look at the whole picture, the facial expression, the tone of voice, the speed of the speech.
Okay, so how did he fix it? Because this wasn't just a case of trying harder. The research shows he had a pretty rigorous, pretty clever training regime.
He did. And this is where our listeners should really start taking notes. Kenji treated his ears like he was a marathon runner in training. His first step was to expose himself deliberately to dirty English.
Dirty English being the opposite of that clean textbook audio.
Exactly. He immediately stopped listening to Learn English podcasts. They were too clean, too perfect. He went out and specifically downloaded podcasts with difficult regional British accents. He started listening to football call-in shows from Glasgow. He found comedy panel shows from Liverpool.
Wow. I've heard some Glaswegian accents that I, as a native speaker, would probably need subtitles for. That sounds like diving straight into the deep end of the pool. Is that really effective?
It feels completely overwhelming at first. And he said that initially his comprehension just plummeted. It went down to maybe 30% if he was lucky. But here's the key. He wasn't trying to understand the plot of the conversation.
So what was he listening for?
He was just trying to tune his ear to the vowels, to the rhythm, to the way they cut words short or link them together. He was basically calibrating his internal radar to the incredible flexibility of the language in the wild.
It's like exposure therapy for your ears.
It is, 100%. If you only ever lift 5-pound weights in the gym, you're never going to get stronger. He was forcing himself to lift 50-pound weights.
Okay, so that's audio. What else?
Then he turned to visual media. But again, not just any media. He specifically watched nuanced, character-driven comedies like the UK version of The Office and Peep Show.
Why The Office specifically? Why is that harder or better than something like, say, Friends?
Well, Friends is basically a stage play. They project their voices, they articulate every word so that the live studio audience in the back row can hear the joke. The Office is a mockumentary.
Right, it's supposed to feel real.
So it's mumbled, it's full of awkward silences, people interrupting each other, and two characters talking over one another. It is the closest thing to a real dysfunctional office environment you could possibly get on a screen.
And his method for watching wasn't just passive, was it? He wasn't just binge watching with a bowl of popcorn?
No, absolutely not. He used a very specific technique that the research calls the subtitle sandwich.
Okay, I like the sound of that. Walk us through the subtitle sandwich.
Okay, so step one. You watch a short scene, maybe just 2 or 3 minutes, with the English subtitles turned on. You read along, you get the context, you see the words as they're spoken.
So you have the map. You know what's supposed to happen.
Exactly. Step two, you immediately turn the subtitles off and you watch that exact same scene again, right away. Now, your brain isn't panicking because it already knows what's being said. It's not trying to decode for meaning.
So what is it doing?
It's mapping. Your brain is mapping the sound that it hears, that methy, mumbled audio, to the memory of the clean text you just read.
You're actively building a bridge between the written word you already know and the blurry connected sound that you hear in real life.
That's the perfect analogy. And over time, by doing that repeatedly, that gap closes. Your brain gets better and better at recognizing the patterns.
He also focused on something called signposting. Can we unpack that a little?
This is a total game changer for advanced listening. Signposting, or what linguists call discourse markers, refers to all the little phrases that don't add factual content to a sentence, but they tell you where the sentence is going.
Like what kind of phrases?
Things like, mind you, or having said that, or to cut a long story short, or even just, by the way.
Ah, so they're like the road signs on a highway.
Exactly. Perfect. If I say, the project is on schedule, having said that, you instantly know, without hearing in another word, that I'm about to introduce a problem or a contradiction. Right. You don't need to process the next 10 words with all your focus to know that a contrast is coming. You are prepared.
That is so huge for reducing that panic on a word feeling we talked about earlier.
It's the antidote.
If you can see the road signs coming, you don't have to work as hard to follow the map. You can relax a bit.
Precisely. And the result for Kenji was pretty incredible. Within about 6 months, he wasn't just decoding anymore, he was anticipating. He was getting the meaning in real time. He could finally jump into conversations because he could hear the melody and see the signposts, so he knew where they were going.
That idea of anticipation is key. It's the difference between being a passenger and being a co-pilot in the conversation.
Well put.
Okay, let's move into section 2 then, and look at the actual toolkit. I want to pause on that subtitle sandwich idea because it's a great bridge into the practical tools. We have a list of techniques here from the research that go well beyond just watch more TV. The first one is called selective attention and prediction.
This is a genuine superpower for advanced listeners. If you can master this, you're golden.
Okay, so explain it to me like I'm 5. How on earth do I predict what someone hasn't even said yet?
All right, let's play a quick game. If I say to you, I went to the new restaurant downtown, but let's stop right there. What comes next?
The food was bad. Or was too expensive. Maybe it was closed.
Exactly. Your brain, in a fraction of a second, generated 3 highly probable negative outcomes. Why? Because of that one little word. But you narrowed the entire universe of possibilities down from infinite to, a handful of negative ones. That is prediction.
So you're not a mind reader. You're just playing the odds based on the cues.
You are constantly playing the probabilities.
Yeah.
C1 listeners are always running this little background simulation of where the sentence is likely to go. If you hear a speaker say, although the weather was absolutely beautiful, you're already bracing yourself for a contradiction. Your brain preloads the concept of something went wrong.
So you're not surprised when they say, we didn't get to go to the beach.
Exactly. You don't wait for all the words to hit your ear, you preload the concept. So if you really want to break through that C1 plateau, you need to stop focusing 100% of your energy on the nouns and verbs and start paying serious attention to these little connecting bridges. The buts, the althous, the howevers.
Because it frees up your cognitive processing power.
Massively. If you have a good idea of where the sentence is going, you can relax a little bit and focus on the really important new information.
Let's look at another tool in the kit, contextual inference. This seems to directly address that panic on a word phenomenon we touched on with Kenji.
Oh, the panic is real. It's what we call the blocker effect in some of the literature.
The blocker effect.
Yeah. You're listening to a sentence, it's going fine, and then you hear a word you don't know. Let's pick a tricky one like obfuscate, and your brain just slams on the brakes. You stop listening to the rest of the sentence because your entire consciousness is now staring at this one word, obfuscate, in your mind, completely terrified.
Meanwhile, the speaker is already 3 sentences ahead of you, and you've completely lost the thread.
Exactly. So contextual inference is the discipline of actively ignoring the blocker. It's a conscious choice. It's the skill of saying, okay, I don't know that specific word. I'm going to skip over it and look at the shape of the hole it left in the sentence.
I like that. The shape of the hole. Give us an example.
Sure, let's use that word. If I say, the politician tried to obfuscate the truth by flooding the room with thousands of pages of irrelevant documents, you don't know obfuscate, but you know politician, you know truth, and you know irrelevant documents.
So he's trying to hide the truth, or confuse people, make things unclear.
Exactly. You just solved for X. You didn't need a dictionary, you just needed logic. The fundamental mistake that so many C1 learners make is thinking they need 100% data fidelity. They think they have to catch every single word.
But they don't.
They don't. They need about 70% data and 30% logic and inference.
That is remarkably freeing. You're essentially giving people permission to miss words.
It's not just permission, it's mandatory. You will miss words. I miss words, you miss words. Even native speakers miss words all the time in conversation. The difference is, we don't panic. We just interpolate. We fill in the blank without even thinking about it.
Okay, so those are the internal cognitive techniques. What about the source material? The research is very clear that we need to move beyond learner content. We talked about The Office, but the outline lists some real heavy hitters. Podcasts like NPR's Up First, BBC Radio 4's In Our Time, The Daily, Freakonomics Radio. Why these specific ones?
Because they share a few key qualities. They all feature highly articulate, intelligent speakers who are discussing complex, nuanced topics. But, and this is the important part, they do it in a natural conversational way.
It's not scripted, word for word.
Exactly. Take a show like In Our Time.
Yeah.
It is fantastic for C1 practice because you have 3 or 4 world-class academics, top experts in their field, getting genuinely excited about a topic. They interrupt each other. They talk over one another. They'll pause and say, what's the word I'm looking for? It's high level, but it's real.
It's the jazz we talked about earlier. It's improvised within a structure.
It is the C1 battlefield.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if you can follow a heated debate on the history of the Roman Empire where 3 professors are passionately arguing, you can definitely handle a marketing meeting at work.
And what about visual media? We mentioned The Office, but the list here also includes complex dramas like Succession, Sherlock, and House of Cards.
Succession is a masterclass in advanced C1 English. It's just packed with everything that's difficult. You've got business jargon, rapid-fire overlapping dialogue, tons of incomplete sentences, and a very heavy reliance on very specific cultural and literary references.
And the insults. The insults are a language of their own.
The insults are practically Shakespearean.
Yeah.
But seriously, if you can follow a boardroom scene in Succession without subtitles, you can handle a boardroom in real life, no question.
And Sherlock is mentioned, I assume, for the sheer speed of delivery. Benedict Cumberbatch speaks so incredibly fast in that show.
Speed is a variable you have to train for. It's like training at altitude.
Right.
And don't forget documentaries. Something like Our Planet or Planet Earth is great because the stunning visuals provide context. But the vocabulary itself is often scientific and highly descriptive. It really expands your lexical range.
The source material also puts a big emphasis on global sounds. We can't just listen to the Queen's English or a standard general American accent.
No, absolutely not. English is a global language, period. You need to actively seek out content from Australia, from Ireland, from Canada, New Zealand, South Africa. Watch foreign films with English dubs. Often, the voice actors used for dubbing have a wide range of accents. You have to train your ear to be flexible and not just tune to one or two standard models.
Okay, so that covers the inputs, but the outline also mentions some high-intensity drills. These sound, well, they sound like work.
They are work. This is the gym. This isn't the fun, passive part of learning. This is where you do the reps and build the muscle.
The first one on the list is transcription. This just sounds like writing down what you hear. Is it that simple?
It sounds simple, but there's a crucial twist. You take a very short audio clip, no more than 30 seconds, or you will go completely crazy, and you write it down absolutely word for word.
Word for word, including what?
Including the the false starts, the coughs, the stutters, everything.
Why the ums and us? That seems like a waste of ink.
Because that is where you learn about connected speech. When you force yourself to write it all down, you start to see how I am going to in a textbook becomes I'm gonna, or even imana in real speech. You see the mechanics of how sounds blend and disappear.
Ah, so you're tuning your ear to the reality of the sound wave, not the idealized separate words you have in your head.
Exactly. When you write it down, you are forced to acknowledge all the little noises and connections that your brain usually filters out as unimportant. It's like looking at the language under a microscope.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about developing precision. What about the next one? Advanced shadowing.
Shadowing, at its basic level, is just mimicking a speaker. But at an advanced level, you aren't just repeating the words a second after you hear them. You are trying to mimic the music.
The prosody again?
The whole package. The rhythm, the speed, the pauses, the emotion in their voice. You try to literally become that person for 30 seconds.
It's almost like acting practice.
It is. It's a fantastic bridge between listening and speaking because you can physically feel what that rhythm feels like in your mouth and your chest. If the speaker in the clip shouts, you shout. If they whisper, you whisper.
And finally, the list mentions dictation.
This one is very old school, but it's incredibly effective as a diagnostic tool. You listen to a sentence and you write down exactly what you heard. It's a pure test of your accuracy and your short-term memory.
How is it a diagnostic tool?
It highlights your specific blind spots. For example, a lot of learners have trouble hearing the difference between can and can't, or they miss the as on the end of plural nouns or third-person verbs. Dictation makes those little mistakes impossible to ignore.
And we can't forget the tech tools. The outline mentions using voice messaging on apps like HelloTalk or Tandem.
That's a great low-pressure way to practice. It's like a conversation with training wheels. You listen to a message, you have some time to process it and think about your reply, and then you record your own message back. It slows the whole interaction down just enough to allow you to consciously practice these skills without the pressure of a live face-to-face conversation.
I love that. A conversation with training wheels. Okay, let's pivot now to a different kind of challenge. We've talked a lot about Kenji in a casual day-to-day office setting. But what happens when you're dealing with highly specialized technical English?
This brings us to our second case study, Dr. Sofia Rodriguez.
Sophia's story is really interesting. She's a cardiologist from Brazil. Now, her general English is excellent. She can order dinner, she can travel, she can chat with people about the weather, no problem. But then she started attending international medical conferences.
And she felt, in her own words, completely adrift.
Because medical English is its own beast entirely, isn't it?
It's basically its own dialect. You have the jargon, of course. But the thing is, Sophia knew the jargon. She knew what a myocardial infarction was. That wasn't the problem for her.
So if it wasn't the vocabulary, what was the problem?
The problem was the structure and the speed of the discourse. She was getting lost in the sea of abbreviations that native-speaking doctors throw around without even thinking. She was getting lost in the complex metaphors they use to explain biological processes. And she was struggling because, in a room full of experts, there's a lack of clear signaling. Everyone assumes you already know the basics of the topic.
So what was her strategic shift? She didn't just go home and study a medical dictionary.
No, because as we said, lists of words rarely help at this level. Instead, she used a form of immersion therapy. She subscribed to several clinical review podcasts and audio journals of surgical case studies, but the absolute key was a change in her behavior while listening.
What did she change?
She forced herself to stop pausing the audio to look up terms she didn't know.
That's the panic on a word solution again, but in a technical context.
Exactly. She had to train herself to let go. She accepted that she wouldn't catch every single term. Instead, she shifted her goal entirely. She stopped trying to understand every word and started focusing on understanding the structure of the argument.
So she was listening for the big picture, problem, method, solution, conclusion.
Precisely. If you know the underlying structure of a scientific presentation, you can fill in a lot of the blanks with your own professional knowledge. And in doing this, she discovered something amazing. She started to notice the formula.
I love this concept. Tell us about the formula.
She began to realize that even in these incredibly high-level, complex medical discussions, the doctors were using the same recurring anchor phrases over and over again.
What kind of phrases are we talking about?
Well, phrases to introduce evidence like, the data from our cohort indicates that. Or phrases to politely disagree with a colleague like, well, I certainly appreciate that point. I wonder if we've considered. Or to introduce a new idea, a novel approach might be too.
So those are lifelines for a listener.
They are. They're total lifelines. If you hear a speaker say, while I appreciate that point, you know a disagreement or a counter-argument is coming next. You don't need to parse every single grammatical element. You just need to listen for the counter-argument. These phrases became her anchors in the storm of information. She realized that academic and technical English is actually very, very formulaic.
It's like learning the specific rules of a new game. Once she knew the rules, she could actually play.
And the result was that she started to engage in what she called the symphony of medical English. She wasn't just a passive listener translating in her head anymore. She gained the confidence to actually raise her hand and ask questions during the Q&A sessions.
And that really is the ultimate test of C1 listening, isn't it? Can you participate? Can you hold the floor and contribute to the conversation?
That's the end game.
That is a perfect transition, then, to our next big section. We've spent a lot of time on input on listening. Now we need to talk about output, the pivot to speaking.
And the two are, of course, inextricably linked. Your listening feeds your speaking. The input provides all the natural patterns, the collocations, the vocabulary you need for your output. You cannot output what you have not first input.
So let's define C1 speaking. It's clearly not just about being understood.
No. That's more like B2. B2 is being understood. If you say, I go store yesterday, I understand what you mean. But it's not C1. C1 is about a combination of things. Fluency, coherence, appropriateness, and a certain level of sophistication.
Sophistication? That sounds a little intimidating.
It just means having the nuance to handle complex ideas effectively. Can you persuade someone to see your point of view? Can you use an idiom correctly without it sounding like you just memorized it from a book? Can you adjust your tone and level of formality depending on whether you're talking to your boss or your best friend?
But even at this advanced level, people hit some really common roadblocks when it comes to speaking.
The biggest one, by far, is overthinking grammar. We call it monitoring. Your brain is constantly running a spell check and a grammar check on your sentence before you've even finished saying it.
And that leads to that awful hesitation, that pausing.
It leads to what we call the deer in the headlights syndrome. Your mind just goes completely blank because the cognitive load of producing the language and checking it for errors at the same time is just too high. So you freeze.
And then there are those fossilized errors mentioned in the research.
Those are tough. These are the mistakes that have just stuck with you over the years. You might even know it's wrong, for example. You might always say, I've been there yesterday, instead of the correct, I was there yesterday. But you've said it that way for 10 years. It's a deeply ingrained habit, and it's very hard to break.
And on top of all that, there's just the plain old fear of making mistakes, which, ironically, helps nobody. It just limits your willingness to experiment.
Absolutely. If you are terrified of making a mistake, you will never try to use a complex sentence structure. You'll just stick to the safe, simple subject-verb-object sentences you learned in your first year. And if you do that, you will never, ever reach C1.
To really illustrate this crucial mental shift, let's look at our next case study, Anya.
Anya is a really fascinating case. She's a German philosophy student. So intellectually, she is operating at an extremely high level. Her theoretical English, her reading and writing was incredibly strong.
But she was absolutely terrified of joining the University Debate Society.
And for very good reason. Debating is like the extreme sport of speaking. It requires instant reaction. You cannot pause for 5 seconds to conjugate a verb or check a preposition. The moment is just gone.
And her core problem was that she was translating in her head.
That's it, a classic C1 trap. She would hear an argument from her opponent in English, her brain would translate it into German, she'd formulate a clever rebuttal in German, then she'd translate that rebuttal back into English, and then she'd do a final grammar check on the English sentence.
By the time she was ready to speak, the topic had completely changed.
Exactly. It creates so much mental friction. It's like trying to run a high-end video game on a really old, slow computer. The lag is what's killing you.
So what was the breakthrough advice for her?
Her professor told her something that changed her entire perspective. He said, Anya, stop aiming for grammatically correct sentences. Aim for effective arguments.
That's a huge shift in priority. It's about communication over perfection.
It is. And the core instruction that came with that advice was, you must start thinking in English.
Everyone says think in English, but it feels so abstract. How do you actually do that? It feels like telling someone to just fly. But Anya had a specific, practical training regime.
She did. It wasn't magic. Her first technique was internal narration. She would simply go about her day and narrate what she was doing, what she was seeing, but strictly in English, inside her own head. Okay, I am making coffee now. The water is boiling. Where did I put the spoon?
It sounds so simple, but I can see how that removes the translation step entirely.
Exactly. It forges a direct link between the concept of a spoon and the English word spoon, without German acting as the middleman. She also started arguing with news headlines mentally. She'd see a headline online and instantly try to form a strong opinion about it in English.
And for the debating society itself, she completely changed how she prepared for a debate.
She stopped writing out full scripts.
Now that seems counterintuitive. Why is scripting bad? Wouldn't it make you more prepared?
Because if you memorize a script, you are just reciting, not speaking. It's rigid. If you forget a single word, the whole sentence can collapse and you panic. Instead, she started using mind maps with just a few keywords for each of her arguments.
So she knew the main points she wanted to hit, but she was forced to construct the actual sentences on the fly in the moment.
Yes, that forced her brain to do the hard work of real-time sentence creation. It forced fluency. It is much scarier in the beginning, but it is the only way to build that spontaneous speaking muscle.
She also used what the research calls impromptu practice. She joined an organization called Toastmasters.
Yes, and she joined specifically for a segment they do called Table Topics. This is where you have to stand up, they give you a completely random word or a question, and you have to speak intelligently about it for 1 to 2 minutes, immediately. No preparation time at all.
That sounds absolutely terrifying.
It is. But it is the perfect cure for perfectionism. You have no time to be perfect, you just have to survive. You quickly stop caring about the third conditional, and you start caring about simply making a coherent point.
And the outline says she used some tactical speaking tools as well. The first one is filler words.
Yes. We often tell learners not to use filler words like or like, but the truth is native speakers use them constantly. Well, or let me see. These are not mistakes. They are tools. They buy you a precious second or two of thinking time without creating an awkward silence.
And it makes you sound more natural. An awkward silence feels much less fluent than a well-placed, it signals to the listener, I'm not done talking, I'm just thinking.
Precisely. And for a philosophy student, linking words were essential. Learning to properly use therefore, however. In addition, on the other hand, these are the glue that holds complex logical arguments together.
And the last tool here is paraphrasing.
This is the ultimate safety net for any speaker. If you're in the middle of a sentence and you suddenly forget the specific word for, say, umbrella, don't freeze. Just talk around it. Say the thing that protects you from the rain.
Keep the conversation moving.
It's the most important rule. Talking around a missing word is a C1 skill. Freezing because of a missing word is a B1 problem.
So the result for Anya was that this translation friction finally started to fade. She could express her complex ideas spontaneously.
She unlocked her true voice. She wasn't just translating Anya into English anymore, she was Anya in English.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of speaking mechanics in Section 6. We've established this need to balance fluency with accuracy.
It's a constant balancing act at this level. You want to flow naturally, but you also want to be precise and correct.
One big concept mentioned here is vocabulary activation. How do we move words from our passive vocabulary, words we understand when we read them, to our active vocabulary, words we actually use in conversation?
You have to consciously and deliberately force them into your speech. It feels unnatural at first. If you learn a great new word like ubiquitous, you have to make it a personal mission to use the word ubiquitous in a conversation that day, even if it feels a little bit forced.
It's the classic use it or lose it.
Exactly. And you also need to actively adopt collocations.
Can you explain collocations for us? This is an area where even very advanced learners can sound foreign, even if their grammar is technically perfect.
Collocations are just word pairs that naturally go together in the mind of a native speaker. For example, in English, we say fast food, not quick food. We say make a mistake, not do a mistake. Now, if you say do a mistake, I understand you perfectly, but it just sounds slightly off.
It hits the uncanny valley. It's grammatically okay, but culturally wrong.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Learning and using common collocations is what makes you sound truly native. It smooths out all those little rough edges in your speech.
And then, of course, there is pronunciation and prosody. This is where so many advanced learners get stuck. They get obsessed with pronouncing every single letter in a word perfectly.
But English just doesn't work like that. As we talked about with Kenji's listening, English is a stress-timed language.
We stress the important words, the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, and we kind of crush the unimportant words, the prepositions, the articles together.
So a sentence like, I went to the store, written on a page, sounds like I went the store when spoken. If you pronounce it, I went to the store. With equal stress on every word, you sound robotic. Learners need to get comfortable with smushing words together. That's what connected speech is all about.
It's the schwa sound, isn't it? That
Yeah.
lazy sound that's so common in English.
The glorious schwa. It's the most common vowel sound in English. To becomes to. For becomes fur. A becomes upper. I would say that mastering the schwa is 50% of the battle for sounding fluent.
And intonation.
That's using the pitch of your voice to show meaning and emotion. If I say, really, with a rising pitch, I'm asking, is that true? If I say really with a falling pitch, I'm saying, I agree with you, or maybe I am disappointed. The words are the same. The music carries the real meaning.
How do we actually practice this stuff? Because it's really hard to hear yourself accurately when you're in the middle of talking.
You have to create feedback loops. The best way, even though everyone hates it, is to record yourself speaking.
Oh, the dreaded voice recording.
I know it's painful to listen to your own voice, but you absolutely have to do it. Listen back critically. Where did you hesitate? Did your intonation on that question sound curious or did it sound aggressive? It's like a sports team watching the game tape to find their mistakes.
And self-correction becomes a skill in itself.
A vital skill. If you catch yourself making a mistake as you're talking, just correct it and move on. Yesterday I was going to the store when. That shows a high level of control. It shows that you are monitoring your speech without letting it freeze you.
We have one final case study, and I think this one is really important because it deals with the deep psychological side of things. Let's talk about Thabo.
Thabo is a South African entrepreneur who moved to London. He has excellent business sense, a great vocabulary, really solid English. But he was shy, and specifically, he was incredibly self-conscious about his South African accent.
He told the researchers that he felt like he was performing at networking events.
He was, and he was constantly worried that people couldn't understand him. He felt that his accent was a huge barrier. He had this idea in his head that if I don't sound like Hugh Grant, nobody here will take me or my business ideas seriously.
This is so common. So many learners feel that if they don't sound like a BBC newsreader or a Hollywood actor, they aren't good at English.
And it is such a damaging and incorrect mindset. Luckily, Thabo had a mentor who gave him a vital mindset shift. He told him, Thabo, your accent is part of you. It tells your story. It's a strength, not a weakness.
It's part of his identity. It tells a story of where he's from and the journey he's been on.
Exactly. And the mentor told him that his goal should not be perfection. The goal should be connection.
I love that. Shift from perfection to connection, because people ultimately want to talk to a real, interesting human being, not a perfect-sounding robot.
Precisely. If you have a thick accent, but you are warm, engaging, and genuinely interested in the other person, people will want to talk to you. If you have perfect grammar, but you are terrified and stiff and boring, they will find an excuse to walk away.
So what was Taibo's action plan after this revelation?
First, he started learning small talk by actually listening to his colleagues, not by studying phrases in a textbook. He wanted to sound real. He started recording his business pitches, but he stopped listening for grammar errors. Instead, he checked for stiffness.
Was he sounding enthusiastic? Was he letting his passion for his business come through?
Right. And he forced himself to go to networking events, but with a new, smaller micro goal. He told himself he didn't have to be the life of the party. He just had to start 3 interesting conversations, regardless of how nervous he felt.
And there's a really fascinating point here in the outline. He learned to use active listening as a speaking tool.
This is a brilliant psychological trick.
Mm.
Taibo realized that if he focused all his mental energy intensely on the other person in the conversation, he completely forgot to be nervous about himself.
It takes the spotlight off you and puts it on them.
Yes. If you are genuinely listening, asking good follow-up questions, and being curious about their story, the pressure just evaporates.
Yeah.
And ironically, that makes you a much better speaker because it makes you a much better conversationalist.
So what was the end result for Taibo?
His fluency improved dramatically because he was finally having real conversations, not performances. His accent didn't disappear, of course, but it became part of his professional brand. He became known as the sharp South African entrepreneur with the great ideas and that warm, engaging vibe.
That is such a powerful lesson. It's not about erasing who you are. It's about learning how to translate who you are authentically into English.
Beautifully put. That's the essence of it.
Okay, let's bring all of these threads together now in Section 8. We're talking about synthesis, the virtuous cycle.
We've talked about listening and speaking as if they are separate skills, but at this level, they are a completely integrated feedback loop. Speaking actually sharpens your listening.
How so?
Well, when you personally struggle to pronounce a difficult word, you become hyper-aware of how other people pronounce it. When you struggle to find the right phrase to express an idea, you'll notice it immediately the next time you hear someone else use it in a podcast.
And of course, listening feeds speaking by providing all the raw data, the patterns, the vocabulary.
Exactly. Every single conversation you have is a data point. The key insight here is to start thinking like a scientist. If you miss something because of a strong accent, that's not a failure. That is a new listening target. If you find you can't explain a concept from your work, that's not a failure. That is a new vocabulary target.
It's all just feedback for the system.
It's all just feedback.
But we do have to acknowledge the reality of the plateau. Progress feels so much slower at C1.
It absolutely does. At the A1 beginner level, you learn the words cat and dog, and you've basically doubled your animal vocabulary in a day. It feels incredibly fast. At C1, you might spend a week learning a subtle nuance of a phrasal verb, and it just doesn't feel like a big, satisfying win.
So how do we manage that feeling of stagnation? That feeling that you're just not getting any better?
You have to switch to micro goals. Don't have a vague goal like, I want to get better at English. That's too big, it's unmeasurable. Instead, say, this week I want to learn and use 5 new collocations related to business. Or, I want to listen to one 20-minute Irish podcast and aim to understand 50% of it.
Concrete, specific, and achievable targets.
And you have to reframe your mistakes. They're not failures, they are data. Every single mistake you make is a little map that points directly to what you need to focus on learning next.
And finally, the research says you have to reconnect with your why.
This is the most important thing. Why are you even doing this? Is it to advance your career? Is it to connect more deeply with friends or family? Is it just for the pure intellectual joy of mastering something difficult? That purpose, that why, is the fuel that will get you through the frustrating days when you feel like you're stuck.
So, to summarize our whole mission today, C1 is about so much more than just grammar. It's about unlocking your own authentic voice. It's about moving from simply sending information like a telegraph machine to true human engagement.
It's all about connection.
We've looked at the journey of Kenji, who learned to hear the real melody of the street. We saw Sophia, who mastered the hidden formula of her highly technical field. We had Anya, who learned to stop translating and start thinking in English to win the debate. And finally, Thabo, who bravely chose connection over the impossible goal of perfection.
And these aren't just feel-good stories. They are practical roadmaps. They show that with hard work and, more importantly, the right mindset and the right strategies, you can break through.
This has been a massive and incredibly useful deep dive. Thank you for guiding us through all of this.
It was my pleasure. It's an endlessly fascinating topic.
And to you, the listener, here's a final thought for you to mull over. You have built the house. You're learning how to live in it. But now I want you to consider this. How can your unique voice, your unique perspective, and yes, your unique accent, add something to the global conversation that wasn't there before? The goal isn't just about you understanding the world. It's about the world finally getting the chance to understand you.
That's the real goal.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.